Good afternoon, and thank you for joining me on another episode of As Sharifah Videocast. I am your host, Sharifah Hardie, and I have an amazing show for you today. But before we get into today's show, I'm going to ask you to do what I always ask you to do, and that is to go ahead and share this show because friends don't let friends miss out on As Sharifah Videocast. So if you are enjoying yourself, if you want to learn more, you definitely don't want to be the only one on the show or learning about the show. So please let your friends know what we're doing. Get your notepads ready. Get ready to take notes because this show, I guarantee you, is just going to blow you away. I want to introduce our guest today, Dr. Danny Braswell. Good morning, Dr. Braswell. How are you?
Good afternoon, Sharifah. Thanks so much for having me. I love your energy. We need a lot more positive energy in the world.
You caught me. You caught me. I'm like, good morning. This is my, honestly, like for real, this is my third show of the day. So I don't even know what time it is. Is it morning, afternoon, evening? Like, are we in the middle of the night? I have no idea at this point. So you caught me there. Good afternoon. But I read your bio. And the first question that came to mind, we're going to talk about a lot of different things, but we're definitely going to talk about pivoting during the global pandemic and during COVID-19. Because from what I saw, you're somebody who's always on the go. You're always traveling. You're always speaking. You have a lot of people that you're out in front of. And then to be in a quarantine and not be able to do what you're used to doing, I wanted to know how you've been able to adjust, as well as what was pre-COVID and what is post or during COVID.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Sharifah. Just wait until this pandemic's over. I'm just waiting to get on an airplane again. I always point out to people that in Chinese, the character for the word crisis is actually two different characters. One means danger, the other one means opportunity. And while there's all kinds of horrible things happening in the world right now, there's also all kinds of wonderful opportunities that are presenting themselves to those of us that are paying attention. And so I've actually looked at this as a huge blessing, tons of time with my family, and they're not sick of me yet. And now I'm able to do all these things without leaving my office. And so like you've had a couple of interviews today. I mean, I just gave a keynote address for a school district in El Paso. Before that, I was doing an online meeting with the government of Saudi Arabia. Just this week, I've done interviews with on live television in Nepal, Pakistan, and Nigeria. I mean, I can't do that on airplanes. I mean, I can, but I'd be completely exhausted. So I'm really excited about all this. I just gave a keynote address for a school district in El Paso.
I'm messing it up. Today, I'm all over the place, Danny. Keynote speaker. How does one become a keynote speaker?
Well, I've always said that the more screwed up your life is, the more you can make as a keynote speaker. And so I've had all kinds of mistakes and mishaps in my life. Reading your bio, I loved it because you really embrace the fact that, that concept, the Chinese proverb, fall down 7 times, get back up 8. I've been blessed. I started actually, I've been kind of joking with people. In college, I worked for a United States congressman. In high school, I worked at a health club where I cleaned toilets. And I always tell people, if I ever had the choice between one or the other, I'd much rather clean toilets in a health club than ever work on Capitol Hill again. I was a journalist, and then I wanted to be the next Charles Kuralt and do all kinds of great stories about all the positive things happening in America. And my editor decided to put me on the campaign trail, and so I covered a presidential election. And I just saw how negative a lot of the reporting was, and so I came to a pivot point where I was offered a job for the city beat of a major newspaper for $16,500 a year, or I had applied for a teaching position in Compton, California for $25,000 a year. So I always tell people I became an educator for the noblest of reasons, the high pay. And so I was blessed to teach in the Compton and Watts area for several years. Absolutely loved my experiences there. I really missed the kids there. And moved up from a teacher to an administrator. I've taught now for over 20 years at various universities. Now I'm a a faculty advisor at the Cal State Teach program, which is, we kind of saw everything beforehand. It's an online program, and so we haven't had any kind of problems. I'm also a visiting distinguished professor at the American University in Cairo, and so I was fortunate enough to be able to go to Egypt before the pandemic. So I'm all over the place, but becoming a keynote speaker is really about just having lots of different experiences. And I always encourage people, especially the kids, I say, it's just as important to understand what you don't like to do as it is what you do like to do. And so by being a jack of all trades and not being able to hold down steady employment, I managed to figure out what I like and what I don't like.
I think you've been taking notes from my bio because I'm all over the place. I'm like, I'm doing this thing, I'm doing that thing. But when you were talking about deciding between politics and anything else, I was like, oh my God, I can completely relate, because I always tell people I launched the Roundtable Talk Show after my run for Long Beach City Council. So I felt like they wouldn't give me city council, but I am going to have a platform to have a voice. And people have said, oh my God, I'm sorry you didn't win. I wish you would have won. You would have won. You would have been great. And I'm like, oh, I'm so glad I didn't have to do that, because I did not want to spend all day, every day, listening to everyone else's problems, or having to be politically correct. That to me is like the death of my spirit, to have to be politically correct. Whereas on my different talk shows and my different platforms, I can verbalize my opinion without anyone being able to say, no, Sharifah, you can't say that. So to me, I found politics to be very confining.
Yeah, well, and you have a great platform, and you can actually have probably a bigger impact outside the political spectrum. I mean, I'd actually really prefer you running for office. We have enough old white guys in office. We're starting to finally see some diversity where political offices hopefully will start to resemble what America resembles. I mean, the United States Senate still only has about 20 female senators when we have 52% of the population are females. We have, yesterday was a large announcement, the first African-American, Asian-American vice presidential candidate. I mean, these things, it's unbelievable to me that it took until 2020 for these things to happen. But I'm more than happy to see these changes happening because they're so long overdue. I think you're a lot like me, Sharifah. I found, because I always wanted to be president of the United States, and now I don't really want to do that so much. I tell people I probably would be better at running for office than actually serving in office, because I can't stand meetings and just listening to a bunch of nonsense. I'm a person who just likes to get things done, and government doesn't lend itself to getting things done very quickly.
Absolutely. I mean, there's about to go on another break before deciding how to help the American people. You just had a 30-day break after the 4th of July holiday. Focus on the people, help the people. Sometimes I think it's like that meme that says, this is the meeting that should have been an email. Some people just love to meet for the sake of meeting, as opposed to just making a change. So I am like you. I love to have these conversations and love to make change, but I think I'm going to do it outside of the system as opposed to running for some type of office. I was asked by one of my guests on the show, he said, Sharifah, do you think you'll ever run again? I was like, sure, I'll continue to run, but doesn't mean that I plan to win. But it helps me to get out there. It helps me to have a larger platform. I did a speaking engagement a couple of months ago here in Long Beach, and they had the prosecutor of the city of Long Beach on the panel. After the panel, he comes up to me, he's like, I haven't met you, but I know your name. And I was like, cool, I was patting myself on the back. I'm like, the prosecutor knows my name, and it's not because I'm guilty of a crime.
That's great. I love it.
It makes me feel good. But I think, and I believe that I got here because of all my struggles. I was laid off 8 times, and I really felt like I wanted to make a change in the world. And even with my campaign, I focused on job creation. With all the civil unrest in America, I had to kind of question, was that the right way to go? Like, should I have focused more on police brutality? Should I have focused more on racial unrest in the community? But what I found was, and what I believe is that hungry people are the ones who steal. Hungry people are the ones who cause destruction and things in the community. So if we can create jobs, that's why I'm so big on entrepreneurship. I believe that small businesses are the heart of America. What are your thoughts on entrepreneurship, business? I know you're an author. I definitely want to talk about your book, but what are your feelings on that?
Well, I mean, I was blessed. I've been, and I know you're like this too. I'm always trying to surround myself with positive people that are doing things. And so I've been a member of many different mastermind groups where, for those people that don't really know what a mastermind is when you get a group of people, hopefully from a whole bunch of highly divergent areas, and you brainstorm ideas for one another to try and help solve each other's problems. And so through one of my masterminds about 6 years ago, I met the man who eventually became my business partner, Nestor Santia, who's just a wonderful guy. You couldn't get two more different people. Here I am, Mr. Christian, always tries to say the right thing. And he came to this country from Argentina, didn't speak a word of English, built a real estate empire. Every other word's an F-bomb. And
I want to talk to him.
oh, he's great. He said, "Hey, Danny, I like you. I don't like this guy that is your coach, but I like you. I trust you. You and I will do business together someday." And it was 4 years ago. We were actually having lunch at a restaurant in Santa Monica, and we decided to form a company. We created the world's what's now the world's leading reading engagement program online, which has just skyrocketed. Here's a perfect example for you, Sharifah. COVID's been a blessing to me because now that there's millions of parents around the world involuntarily homeschooling their kids and looking for different ways to engage their kids, I have the world's leading reading engagement program, which in basically 67 days, just over 2 months, we can get your kid to read more, read better, and love reading. And that's the most important thing to me is, during this pandemic, we've already seen research from the NWEA that shows that kids are already showing at least a 30% drop off in their reading skills. And that's the kids that are actually doing the homeschooling or the online distance education that school districts are offering. There's so many kids in this country that aren't really being able to do that because COVID revealed one of those dark secrets that nobody wanted to talk about. Even my wife didn't understand why I was so concerned. I said, honey, what this is going to reveal is, first of all, there's millions of kids in this country that don't have access to computers at home, that don't have Wi-Fi. But what a lot of people don't want to talk about is the reason a lot of kids go to school is to eat, because they get the breakfast and lunch there. And those are the types of discrepancies. That's actually really what got me passionate about education. It got me angry. I was blessed, Sharifah. I hated reading growing up. My father's a librarian. I always hated the public library. It always smelled funny. There was always some elderly woman telling me to be quiet. The furniture was uncomfortable. And there's always some freaky guy who thinks he's a vampire hanging out by the shelves. I always hated the library. But once I started teaching in the hood, and I saw that a lot of my students, they didn't have both parents in the home. If they did have a parent in the home, mama or papa was working 2 or 3 jobs to pay the bills. They had nothing to read, and they didn't even know where the library was. And it really was sobering to me, Sharifah, because I said, shame on me. I had a whole bunch of advantages that I never really thought about. And it really made me passionate. I'm like, this is BS. I need to make sure that every kid, I don't believe in equality. I believe in fairness. Give every kid a fair shot. Some people don't need much help. Some people need a lot of extra help. We need to give those people exactly what they need. And so entrepreneurship was just a natural progression where even though I speak around the world at least 100 times a year, but I can only reach so many people, whereas my online reading engagement program, we're able to reach millions and millions of people all over the planet. And it's been extremely rewarding.
Well, I definitely hope and pray that the people who are watching the show today, they go to your website, find out what you're doing, because one of the things that surprised me that I learned on the show, and it kind of happened by happenstance to a certain extent, I was sharing a story in my life where my aunt has her grandchild with her during COVID, and the school sent to my aunt 3 separate emails. Each email was for a week of learning for her granddaughter, and each email had a 90-page PDF. So my aunt's older. She's not tech savvy. She's just like, okay, Sharifah, tell me what I need to do. I'll go print it in to Kinko's or FedEx and make some copies. And I said, I don't know if you realize this, but if you print 90 pages each, right, at 50 cents or 75 cents per copy, you are going, you're going to be looking at hundreds of dollars, And so she went to the school printed the packet for her and they helped her out, but she had no idea what it would take to print out 3 different 90-page packages. And I'm sitting here going, oh my God, like this is horrible. And I was sharing the story, and a guest on my show, she said to me, well, at least she got a packet. She said, I was told by my school to go home and teach your kids something. So teach them how to do a podcast, teach them different ways to learn languages, teach them how to do math. And I was like, okay, I'm confused. What does that mean? Like, was that before the package? They said, no, that's all they said.
Well, that's going to teach them how to curse.
Right. And I was like blown away. And then since then, other people have been giving me different stories and discrepancies about what they had, what their school, and I think it's so unfair across the board.
It's totally unfair. And Sharifah, I wanted to make sure as a thank you to you and all of your wonderful audience, I wanted to give a whole bunch of freebies. And so anybody watching your show, if they go to freereadingtraining.com, again, freereadingtraining.com, I'm going to give everybody a complimentary copy of my book, Read, Lead, and Succeed, which is a book, I wrote it for a principal who didn't know how to engage his faculty. So I said, okay, I'll write you a book. And so once a week, I give you a concept, an inspirational quote, an inspirational story, a book recommendation on a book you should read, but you're probably too lazy because you're an adult. So I also give you a children's picture book recommendation that demonstrates the same concept. And I'm also going to throw in a couple of digital trainings of some of the trainings I do for parents to show them simple ways to get their kids to read more, read better, and love reading. Again, just at freereadingtraining.com, they can get all those things, because that woman's experience is the exact same experience I've had with my own children in their school district. Is so many school districts are scrambling, and it's not their fault either. I mean, with no leadership at the top, with any kind of organized, coordinated effort, it's just been a bunch of chickens running with their heads cut off. And then, so the schools tell the teachers to do this stuff. Well, then the teachers all of a sudden are supposed to be experts at distance learning, even though they've never received any training in that. They don't know what to do. And so the result is you have some school districts are doing a decent job, but my own children, their school district basically would give them an email on Monday with a bunch of homework to do and say, and go to Khan Academy. I'm like, well, that's not teaching. I mean, giving people a 90-page packet, that's not teaching. Teaching is interactive. And so that's why people love my online reading program, because every day I'm just doing 5 to 7 minute videos with parents, giving them quick tips on how to get their kids engaged in reading. Because the more excited we can get kids about reading, the more likely they are to read. And the more they read, the better they get. We're already showing that kids in our program are actually far outpacing students that are in any kind of distance learning program. So there's all kinds of opportunities out here. But fortunately, there's some people with their eyes open, while a lot of people have their heads stuck in the ground.
No, I really, again, hope that they go ahead and take advantage of all the offers, especially the free offers that you're giving, because I am concerned for the future generations, because I feel like it is just like missing a year of school. Like this year didn't even count because many of them didn't learn anything. And prior to COVID, years ago, I had this conversation because, I'm in Long Beach, California. I'm right here with you. Yep. And for years, we had this huge push on K through 12 education. And so I was the homeschooling, and I was having this conversation with a friend of mine years ago. And she was telling me all the reasons why she wanted to homeschool. And I was telling her all my reasons why I didn't think it was a good idea. And my number one reason is the social impact of it. Now, we go to school to learn how to work with other children. We learn from other people. We socialize from other people. We feel better because we have our core group that we can go to school and see every day. And so her son wound up being the valedictorian of his high school class of homeschool. So they have their graduation. It's a huge auditorium full of people. He comes to the podium, takes one look out at the audience, broke down in tears and ran off the stage. And I was like, I guess he just proved my whole point. What are some of the ways that parents right now who are struggling with the social aspect of their students, what are some of the things that they can do?
Well, it makes you wonder if anybody in Congress or the White House ever actually went to school if they can't play together. Right now, doing things like this, I mean, gosh, if you're like me, you wish you had invested in Zoom stock about 6 months ago, because Zoom's going crazy, and WebEx and all these online solutions. But again, there's so many people that have said it, and I'll take. I don't know who to give credit to, so I'm just going to take it as my own. But social distancing doesn't mean that we're social distancing. It just means we're physically distancing. So we can still, go on our iPhones and do our chats with people online. We've been doing play dates online where the kids are looking at other kids. Myself, my buddy Jordan and I did a virtual happy hour the other night to watch the Laker game together, and the Lakers won, which was great.
Yes, yes.
But there's all kinds of ways to keep it up. But as parents, I mean, this is again why I'm always telling them, you don't have to have a PhD to be a really good parent. There's basic things that I train parents to do. I mean, you need to speak with your kids, not to your kids. So find out, well, who do you like to hang out with? What, if you could do anything, what would you do? What do you think would be, what's your favorite subject in school? Why do you like doing that? I'm trying to find out what my kids are interested in constantly. And then in terms of reading, then I developed my reading program just based around my own children's interests. So here's some real quick tips for parents. These are things that some quick wins that any parent can do. I mean, I have 3 children of my own, and my wife gave me one of the greatest compliments. She said, "Thank you, Danny. Our kids love to read because of you." My kids actually don't realize that you can go to bed without reading a book, because we installed a habit very early on. I have a feeling that television is here to stay. And so one of the quick tips I tell parents is turn the closed captioning on the television. I mean, President Bush Sr. signed a very important law 30 years ago. It said every television set sold in America has to have closed captioning. And when I'm doing a parent training, parents say, well, wait a sec. If the show's in English and the subtitles are in English, what good does that do? I'm like, well, that's a fair point, but let me make a point. Have you ever watched a show with subtitles and not looked at the subtitles? That's very difficult for you to do. Your brain is geared towards that text. There's actually research that supports this. If you look at reading scores around the world, the more kids watch TV, what do you think happens to the reading score? Does it go up or does it go down? It always goes down with every country in the world except for one. The country with the highest reading scores in the world also watches the most TV in the world. It's Finland. And how can that be? Well, Finland makes really bad TV shows. And so they have to import Brady Bunch and Gilligan's Island from America, and they subtitle all of them. The kids are watching TV, learning English all the time. And if you want to go an extra bonus, my kids, they know that the price of admission before the TV goes on, they have to bring me something to read. So they'll bring me either a magazine article or a newspaper article or a chapter in a book. We read, and then the TV goes on. It's all about establishing habits. I mean, I've been imploring people not to waste their pandemic. This is an opportunity for people to really make positive changes in their lifestyle, but you have to actually schedule them as a routine, because that's what we're trying to do. I'm always trying to develop better daily habits. And so if you just make it automatic, like brushing your teeth, you don't think about it anymore. And then it just, those minutes stack up. And that's what I'm always imploring parents to do. 20 minutes a day. I sound like Sally Struthers, 20 minutes a day. The time it takes to drink a cup of coffee. You could significantly improve your child's reading ability if you got them reading for 20 minutes a day. And they don't even have to be consecutive minutes. I mean, one of the things I tell parents is the average American spends 15 minutes a day on the toilet. So why don't you put some reading materials next to the toilet so your kid can read by the toilet?
Right.
Whenever you're in the car, put in a book on tape so you're listening to a book on tape. There's all kinds of ways to integrate reading throughout your day. And really, it's very important for us as parents to make sure that we're not just reading with our kids or to our kids, but we're also reading in front of our kids. I used to have a nonprofit called Real Dads Read, and I would challenge all the dads in the audience. I'm like, hey, Dad, you want to know why your kids like football so much? It's because that's the only time you spend with them. If you spend your
That's
time
deep.
reading with them, they'd all be readers, because as my pastor says, parents have the greatest home field advantage in the history of the planet. You could be the worst parent ever, but your kid doesn't know it. To them, your mom or dad, and that's why I'm actually excited about this opportunity right now with my own children. But I think for so many parents, it's a way to reconnect. We have too many idiots in the world that don't know what to do without a video screen. Let's have conversations and do that social engagement that you're talking about, so that we don't have people that are frightened to speak in front of other people. That's ridiculous.
Yes, I agree. But I want to go back to something you said earlier about the libraries. I can completely relate. You know, growing up in California, my mother took us to the Inglewood Library all the time. And we didn't live near there, but that was her favorite library. It was a large library, and I loved it. And the reason I loved it is because every Saturday, someone would come in and they would do some kind of storytelling. They would do some type of arts and crafts. We would always learn something. And so to me, that's one of the most happy and positive memories from my childhood. My children now are 23 and 26. During their childhood, I made sure that I took them to the library, and I always
23 and 26-year-old.
Yes, I do. I had them when I was 2.
Kid when you were 5.
yes, I did. But I made sure that was important for them. And then it goes back to my childhood, because my parents, they was mean to me. If they watch it, I'm just joking. But they refused to answer my questions. I could ask them any question and they would say, look it up in the Encyclopedia Britannica. And I was like, can't you just tell me? You won't give me the answer. It's like, no, if I give you the answer, then you'll never be able to figure it out. You have to be able to read. You have to be able to learn for yourself. So after a while, I didn't even ask anymore. If I wanted to know something, I would go to the Encyclopedia Britannica. Now, we don't have that these days, but when my children were growing up, if they asked mom a question, no matter what it was, they were like, Mom, how far is it from California to New York? I say it is GOOGLE. Like, whatever the question, that is my answer to. They just kind of stopped asking me, because I wanted them to go out and find the information themselves. And with technology and the internet, there's so much information available at your fingertips. So when anybody tells me, oh, I didn't know this, or I don't know how to do this, or I have absolutely no idea how to do something, I always say GOOGLE.
Love it. Absolutely right. I mean, that's what I'm all excited about. Is right now there's some poor kid in Cambodia on a dirt floor, barefoot. But if that kid has a laptop and an internet connection, that kid has the exact same access as the head of Google. The world just got a whole lot smaller. You don't have to be born in New York City anymore to make an impact on the world. I mean, look, there's that girl, I can't remember, Gretchen something or whatever. She's in Norway or one of those Scandinavian countries. I mean, she had the president of the United States in a Twitter.
Yes, I remember that one.
Wow, that's unbelievable. You look at Malala, the youngest Nobel Peace Prize winner of all time. I've watched her speak. She's one of the most eloquent speakers. I mean, she's like 16 years old. It's unbelievable to me. And that's what I always tell my kids. I'm like, as my students, when I physically had students in my classroom, whether it was my little ones or my older ones, I always said the same thing. I'm like, remember, kids, education is valuable, but execution is priceless. Knowledge is not power. Only applied knowledge is power. Knowing what the right thing to do and actually doing the right thing are two different things. So go out there and do the right thing tonight. I mean, get that in their heads all the time. Make it into a habit, into a routine. Your kids now know the GOOGLE. I mean, man, I'd make that into GOO and GLE. I'd always make it into a song in my class.
I like that. I'm gonna make the Google rap. Like, that's what it's gonna be. Like, if you need an answer, GOOGLE. I like that.
Schoolhouse Rock.
Yes, that's what I grew up on, Schoolhouse Rock. So I know if you make it into a song, children tend to remember it. Now, one of the things, though, with reading is some students tend to have like a fear of reading. I don't know what it is. Maybe they struggle with the words, they struggle with comprehension, but I always feel that if there is some type of resistance to reading, then, we have to address that so they can learn to love reading. I love to learn reading, especially as a talk show host, because I have so many people on the show and they'll say, Sharifah, I'm an author. Do you want me to send you a copy of my book? And the honest part of me really wants to be like, that's okay.
I'm good.
it, but I can't, because that's rude. But to me, it's like more homework. You know what I mean? Like now I have to do homework and read this so I have an understanding of who they are and what their book is about. But it's just like adding to it. But do you see sometimes that students have a fear of reading?
Oh yeah. This is my specialty, is working with struggling and reluctant readers. And I always tell people, just so you know, 4 out of 5 of them are boys. Boys and girls are very different. Little girls will read books about little boys. Little boys have no interest in books about little girls. When I was teaching 2nd grade, I had a little boy, Kiara, and Kiara's 1st grade teacher told me, Kiara don't know nothing. I'm like, thank you. Well, Kiara, who don't know nothing, would come into my classroom and he'd be like, hey, Mr. Braswell, you see Barkley last night? He had 18 points, 16 boards. I'm like, thank you, Kiara. From that day forward, every day after lunch, Kiara would sit on my lap. We'd go through the LA Times sports page together. And by the end of the year, Kiara was one of my best readers. And all that boy ever read about was sports. I mean, I always tell this to parents, the little boy that reads Captain Underpants is going to be a better reader than the little boy that's not reading anything. I mean, Captain Underpants is the gateway drug to Shakespeare. When I taught 8th grade special ed, it wasn't special education. It was 16 boys that nobody else wanted to teach, 8 African-American, 8 Latino. And if their life wasn't miserable enough, they got the white dude as the teacher. And I never had a single tardy. And the reason I never had a single tardy was I always started off class by reading them a short story about some famous person that they're trying to figure out who it was. I grew up listening to Paul Harvey on the radio. Paul Harvey, he passed away a couple of years ago at the age of 325 years old. And every day when I was a kid, I'd listen to Paul Harvey. He'd come on at 12:15. He's like, I'm Paul Harvey, with the rest of the story. And I'm always trying to figure out, what it is. And so those are the types of books I like to write about now, are like those little stories that the kids are like, oh, who's this going to be? They asked me to teach Macbeth to my 8th graders, but they didn't understand Macbeth. They didn't understand Shakespeare. And I was really blessed because I'm like, well, wait a sec. We read Always Outnumbered, Always Outgunned by Walter Mosley. And I'm like, Walter Mosley's a fantastic author, especially for my students, because we're in the South Central area. Walter Mosley's from South Central, and his characters speak like my students speak. And so then I have to say, so you see these gangs are like these guys in this Shakespeare play, and all the guys are, oh, that's what teaching is relating it to our lives. I mean, this is the crazy thing in the American education system. I mean, people graduate knowing calculus. They just never learned how to balance a checkbook. I mean, I'm not saying calculus is bad, but I'm saying let's give them something practical as well. I mean, that student is a 12th grade valedictorian, not being able to speak to people. I mean, I once heard that Johnny Cochran, the attorney for OJ, somebody told me that if you ever met him, not only would he remember you 20 years later, he'd remember something about you. And I'm like, wow.
Oh, wow.
I mean, that's how you're successful. I mean, you really, if all you do is remember people's names and something about them, I'm like, you could be president of the United States doing that, because everybody's favorite subject is themselves. And so if you can really show people how important they are. I always tell people that it's the anecdote, it's the Gladstone Disraeli paradox. Winston Churchill's mother, Jenny, was a contemporary of Queen Victoria, and she knew everybody. And so a reporter asked her once what was the difference between Prime Minister Gladstone and Prime Minister Disraeli. And her response was terrific. She said, well, whenever I left a meeting with Prime Minister Gladstone, I left feeling like, wow, he is the most interesting person I have ever met. But whenever I left a meeting with Prime Minister Disraeli, I left feeling like, wow, I am the most interesting person he has ever met. So what do we do to make people feel important? So you keep on asking me short questions, and I give you very long answers, so I apologize.
No need to apologize at all. I love it. I love it. I love it. I love the long answers. I love the personality. You are so fun, so cool. We're going to have to hang out sometime. But I love that because it's part of why I do what I do. I love talk shows. I love speaking to people. But when I first launched my first talk show in 2009 as Ask Sharifah Radio, I did it because I'm naturally inquisitive. I was that little child that drove my mother crazy because I was always talking. I was like, Why, mom? But why does this happen? And why does that happen? And why did he do that? My mom was like, if you don't just shut up because you're just talking too much. But she was nice about it. She put up with me. But now I do talk shows, but I didn't want to just do a talk show about business. Oh, yeah, you have a product, you have a service. That's nice. But who are you? What are some of your struggles? What were some of your challenges? What were some of your proudest moments? What are some of your obstacles? So I know, just like in every book, every person has a book in them, because we all have a story. So when I interview people, they come away feeling like you're one of the best interviewers ever. That's what they tell me. And I'm like,
you are a great interviewer. You actually listen. It's not really a talk show. It's a listen show. You actually are listening to my answers. A lot of people don't do that. So kudos to you.
Oh, thank you. That's because I want to know. Like, people always ask me, to say, Sharifah, okay, I'll do your interview, but can we do a quick 5 to 10 minute chat prior to? And somehow, politely and sweetly, I get out of doing that because I don't do pre-show calls. And that's mainly because I want to be interested in you. I don't want you to answer all of my questions and then I have to fake like I'm interested and then I'm bored. So I love to learn about people the same way I love to read. And I love marketing stories. I'm gonna bring that into the equation and tie it in, because whenever you talked about stories earlier, whenever I hear about a person's story or their life, I always go to the internet or get a book about how they got to where they are. Like when you look at Walt Disney, when you look at Pike's Fish, not that many people know the Barney the dinosaur story. I love learning the stories.
I want to hear the Barney the dinosaur story. What's that?
Okay, I'm gonna tell you. This is the Barney the dinosaur story is a lesson on marketing. So the company created the video, and you know the little song. I'm not gonna sing. You can sing it if you want, Dr. Braswell.
I love you. You love me. We're a happy family with a great big hug and a kiss from me to you. Won't you say you love me too? I learned to have no shame long ago as a teacher.
Yes, I'm gonna bring you back. I don't know how, where, but I'm gonna hold on to you.
We'll hang out. I saw that you had worked with Roscoe's. I'm like, oh, it's like my favorite place in the world. We'll go to Roscoe's together, get some chicken and waffles, man.
No, they have that here in Long Beach, right there on 3rd.
Oh, I love
down
it.
here. We'll get something to eat. But what they did was they sent the song and the video to they sent the song and the video to stores. And the stores told them, we don't need another purple singing dinosaur. We have enough. So what they did was they sent the video with the song to daycares across America. And so the daycares put the song on. The little kids watched the song at daycare. The little kids started singing the song. And then the moms asked the daycare, where can we get this video? And they said, I don't know. They sent it to us. So the moms called the stores and said, we want this video. How can we get this video? And then the stores called Barney the dinosaur and said, we want to order this video. And so it's creating the demand. That's why it's a marketing story. You have to not only create the demand, but you have to believe in what you're doing to not give up.
I love it. I love it. I'm trying to think. I just wrote a story like that. I have to read you the story. It's in my book. I have to try and figure out where it is in the book. This is the problem. You write the book, you don't remember where anything is. Oh, come on.
It'll come to you.
Keep talking, Sharif. I got to find this story for you.
That's why I said it'll come to you.
Yeah, got to find which chapter it's in. I know
Pike's Fish. Are you familiar with the Pike's Fish?
Yeah. Stephen London, one of the authors of the book Fish, was really kind to me as a mentor. So, which is cool. It's cool when somebody that you admire actually turns out to be as cool as you hope that they're going to be. Oh, come on.
I would love that. I would love to meet him, because that's one of my favorite stories. But it doesn't have to be a business. It's just successful people. I love to learn about their struggles. I love to learn about their journey, because we tend to assume that someone else had it easier, that their path was problem-free. No matter who they are, what their race or religion or whatever, we just tend to assume that it's easy for certain people. But then when you read their story, you'll find out, maybe they were adopted, maybe they were abused, all these different things.
I found the story for you finally, Sharifah. So This is what I did during the pandemic. I wrote a new book, Leadership Begins with Motivation, and it's a whole bunch of like Paul Harvey type stories. So here it is. On the morning of January 17th, 1977, Gary Gilmore, in a plain t-shirt, strapped into a chair with a bag over his head, awaited a firing squad of 5 law enforcement officers to execute him at the state prison in Draper, Utah. Convicted of murdering a gas station employee and motel manager in Utah the year before, Gilmore would be the first person in the United States to be executed in nearly a decade. Shortly before his execution, prison officials asked Gilmore if he had any last words. Neither he nor anyone else that day would know the impact of those words. Over 10 years later, in 1988, Dan Whedon, an advertising executive who co-founded the Whedon plus Kennedy agency in Portland, Oregon, made something of a morbid pitch to a struggling fashion company. He recalled the inmate's final words and used a slight variation for his pitch, and seemingly everyone hated his idea for the company's new slogan. Just trust me on this one, Whedon implored the company's co-founder. And the co-founder, his company, and the public have never looked back since. The co-founder's name was Phil Knight. The struggling brand he co-founded was a shoe company called Nike. And advertising executive Dan Whedon slightly altered death row inmates Gary Gilmore's final words, "Let's do it," into the phrase, "Just do it." So there you go. There's a marketing story for you.
No, I love that. And I'm going to have to get the book so I can and learn all the people. Because I always get like the generalities of the story. I'm one of those people like to sum things up. People don't believe that because I actually went to college to be an accountant. Right. And then I was just like, I can't do this. I can't, numbers. I'm one of those people, numbers come easy to me. Numbers always make sense to me. People hardly ever make sense. But 1 + 1 is always 2. But then when I was actually doing accounting, I was like, can we just round it up? Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's about $500 in the bank,
A future in politics with that attitude.
Just make it whatever we want it to be. I love that. But for me, I just love what I do. I love learning stories. Just, it has to be creative. I couldn't count pennies. I could never be just a bean counter sitting there. I love stories. I love people. I love learning. And then again, I think I told you before the show, I was laid off 8 times. Yeah. I was divorced twice. I was homeless, lost everything I owned but the clothes on my back. But I love that I went through this journey, because now when someone comes to me and they say, well, you know what, Sharifah, I can't do it because of this. I can't do it because of that. I'm like, okay, well, if I haven't experienced it, I can show you an interview of someone's story of the challenges that they went through, and now look at what they're doing. So some people may look at you. How many books have you written?
I've written 16.
Ooh, wow. Like, I thought you was going to say like 5. I'm like, he has to, I just kind of assumed, but 16? Wow.
Well, you said it earlier, anybody can write a book. I mean, books don't always have to be really thick books. I mean, this book is fairly thin. It's only 224 pages. So, I like books that I can read on an airplane or on the toilet. So those are the types of books I write.
Look, signs you might be an entrepreneur. Yep. You'll be able to finish that one right there on the toilet,
I'll put it on. I have one of the top book clubs online called lazyreaders.com, and every month I provide 10 book recommendations, 3 or 4 adult level, 3 or 4 young adult level, and 3 or 4 children's level books, all under 250 pages. So you have something you can read when you're stuck in a meeting. And so I would definitely, I have to feature that book on there, because it's a positive thing. People need to be, I don't have time for negative books. So I learned that from my parents. My parents always changed the sad endings to happy endings. So it wasn't until I was a college graduate that I found out Old Yeller actually died, because when they got to the part where they shoot Old Yeller, my dad would be like, and they lived happily ever after.
I wonder what your dad did to Thelma and Louise. Like, this is
yeah, exactly. I don't know how he'd deal with Tarantino either.
I love that. I can see it's because of your family and your parents. The people that really enjoy, they always tell me stories about their family, but I'm definitely going to send you an image of the book and a link to the book if you want to go ahead and promote it. But the point that I was initially making before I got so distracted was, people may look at you. You publish 16 books. You have a business. You're speaking all over the country, all over the world. You're a keynote speaker. What are some of the challenges and the obstacles that you personally had to overcome to get to where you are today?
Yeah, so one of my, and Perspective is such a valuable thing, Sharifah. That's
Mhm.
what's so great about your show is you're giving people opportunities to see all these people that maybe they're successful now, but it wasn't always like that. When I do corporate trainings, I always ask executives, "What's the opposite of success?" And they all say failure. I'm like, "No, it's not.
Mhm.
To succeed, you need to fail a lot. The opposite of
Right.
success is not trying or
Mhm.
quitting." One of my idols growing up was I don't usually tell this story, but I was speaking to a school in India, and this little boy had a little disability, and he was asking me a question about success, and I said, "Well, when I was a little boy, your age, they always put me in special education. They always labeled me stupid, but, but because I stuttered. And eventually, I went to a school where a teacher, she would sing things to me and I would sing them back. It's kind of like the story of the movie The King's Speech. And I
Mhm.
gradually lost my stutter and I became a swan. But what I pointed out to the little boy said, isn't this interesting though? The little boy that was stupid, that they said couldn't do anything, who couldn't speak, now gets paid ridiculous sums of money going around the world to do what? To speak.
Speak.
So I think every kid needs to hear those types of stories. I mean, 25 years ago, I remember this. 25 years ago, I was teaching fifth grade, and one of my boys is like, "Hey, Miss Bassell, my mama says the reason they call it the White House is because you got to be white to live there." Now I could say, not anymore. You can be
Yes.
black or orange.
Yeah.
So all kinds of possibilities.
You are fun. You are so fun. I like you. We gonna hang out. I don't know. We gonna go roll up Crenshaw, I guess. I don't know. I
That'd be
just
great.
made that up. But we gonna do some kind of fun hood things together. But what stood out to me is that in your experience, and just I think in a lot of the people that I talk to, is usually someone that comes into a person's life that allows them to make that pivot, to go from who they are to who they become. I was being interviewed yesterday, and the lady was asking me, she said, "Sharifah, you're a giver. You're always giving to people. Why do you give? Why do you feel that you do what you do?" And I said, "I always feel like, how can I not? How
Mhm.
can I not help people? Because I didn't get here by myself. Everything that I do is based on networking. There were so many people who are influential in my path that I would never be here without them. So just like you, it was a teacher who thought of a different way in order to get you to sing. But also one of the things that I noticed when you were speaking about talking to your students, I find when with teachers, the students usually have the same experience with that teacher. The students usually get the same types of grades in that class. But if the teacher really cares, if the teacher really takes the time and shows interest and makes sure each student is successful, or the teacher takes the time to figure out how the student learns, you will see the students become successful and the classroom becomes successful because it's the teacher that can make a difference, just like with the song.
Hmm. Absolutely. I mean, that's what I became a teacher, realizing I'm like, wow, Oprah had a teacher that inspired her. I'm like, I could actually be that person. I mean, that's why it's great that you're a giver, because you should be like that, because you never know. You never know. I mean, that might be the chosen one that you said an encouraging word and changed their entire life. I mean, I always tell this story. I'm a huge USC football fan, and I was in
Mhm.
Heritage Hall one day, and the football coach, Pete Carroll, walked by, and I'm like, "Hey, coach," and he totally blew me off. And I meant nothing to him. And that guy could be Mother Teresa, but to me, he's always going to be the jerk that didn't say hi to me. And it was actually one of the best lessons I ever learned is you never know. You never know who you're talking to. That might be the person. I mean, he had no idea I would tell that story now to hundreds of thousands of people. I was actually, I mean, and he's probably a great person, but it was a great lesson for me. I'll give a totally different story. Brian Tracy is one of the gurus in personal development. I've never met him in my life. I sent one of my books to him and asked him if he would be kind enough to write me a testimonial. And he wrote me an endorsement within 3 days.
Mhm.
I have close friends who I've asked, please, can you put an Amazon review? They still haven't written the Amazon review. I'm like,
Yes.
but the teaching point is Brian Tracy's at the top of his profession, and he was kind enough to give a little bit of time to this little guy. And I mean, it showed me how to be. So that's more of who I want to be, is that giver that is willing to give his time, because you never know who you're going to impact.
Yes, and you have to be, I feel like, a giver that gives in every moment. I love, one of the things that I believe is that magic and miracles happen in the moment. That's one of my philosophies, one of the things that I live by. And so I try to be completely in the moment, because we never know what difference or what impact we're making on the other person. So you shared a personal experience, and I'll give you a personal experience of mine.
Good.
I went to a book signing for Iyanla Vanzant. Now, if Iyanla Vanzant, this is what I saw with my own eyes. She signed her books the entire time without looking up and making contact and connecting with the person who came out to see her, and it came out and to purchase her book. And I was just, that made me feel bad. Like my heart, like, why don't you, it didn't feel like she appreciated the fact that these people came all the way to see her by just simply looking up, saying thank you, giving them some energy, because that moment I know was so important to the people who came out. Some of these people, they may have been meeting their idol, and their idol didn't even look at them. So sometimes it's the little things. Now, I've had a blast. I had so much fun. I went over a little bit, but our conversation was going so well. But we are coming down to the last few minutes of the show. And Dr. Braswell, what I love to do at the end of every show is just simply allow my guests the opportunity to speak directly to the audience, to everyone who is watching this show live, as well as everyone who's watching in the archives, and simply let them know what you want them to take away from your appearance here today.
Well, first of all, Sharifah, you're just wonderful. I adore you, and just holler whenever you need anything at all. We need a lot more of Sharifahs in the world. We'd be much better off with more people like you. So thank you for having me today. And for those of you that are watching, I mean, there's a lot of people hurting in the world right now. And you have to always remember that the darkest part of the night always precedes the light of the dawn. And this too shall pass. There's going to be some great things. I'm working with so many parents that are struggling trying to get their kids to learn during this pandemic. And so again, just go to freereadingtraining.com. I'll make sure to give you a book and a couple of digital trainings. If you like those digital trainings, then you can participate in the online program, where basically in just over 2 months and 67 days, we get kids to read more, read better, and love reading. I mean, most of the kids in the program show that they boost at least 2 to 3 grade levels in just 2 months, which is great. But that's not what gets me excited. What gets me excited is now the kids love to read. I mean, I've never had to tell a kid, go watch TV. I've never had to tell a kid, go play a video game. And I never want to tell a kid to read a book. I want them naturally interested. I want them, just like you, Sharifah, to go find that information on their own. They don't need me when they have access to the world's library on a cell phone. So again, folks, just go to freereadingtraining.com. As a parent, remember, you are always your child's greatest teacher, and you make a difference every day. And Sharifah, thank you for making a difference and letting me have some time with you today. God bless you. I really appreciate it.
You are so welcome. I enjoyed it. I enjoy meeting new people. I love sharing their stories, sharing their videos. Maybe a parent will have questions on what do we have our children do. I'm like, well, let me send you this link to this interview I just did. We have so many tips and different things you can do to help your child be better and more successful, not only in school, but in life, because I believe that's the most important thing. So I want to thank you for being a guest on today's episode of Ask Sharifah Videocast. And I especially want to thank everyone who tuned in to watch this show live, as well as everyone who's watching it in the archives. Just because you didn't catch it live doesn't mean you're not important, whether you're watching it 2 days from now, 2 months from now, 2 years from now, 20 years from now. It does not matter. The information still remains the same. And whenever you're watching it, please go ahead and share this show, because friends don't let friends miss out on Ask Sharifah Videocast. Now, don't just watch the show. Don't just share the show. I have assignments for you. Visit our guest. Go to his website. Check him out. Follow him on social media. And when you send that email, when you send that tweet, please let him know Sharifah Hardie says hi. And if you are interested in being a guest, please visit the website at AskSharifah.com. Until next time, everyone have a safe and a blessed day. Bye now.